All right. All right, now we're going to use this time to kind of give some insight into bridleless riding. And what we want to do is I want to demonstrate to you not what this horse can do in this particular process, but the procedure that you might want to use to start learning how to ride in a bridleless lesson. There's always safety involved when you're first stepping into this, and obviously you want to know that your horse has good control of his normal riding habits. So what we're going to do in order to start this is, in the beginning of this, I'm going to leave the left bit attached, the left rein attached to the bit, and then I'm going to hook this rein onto itself, creating a loop around the horse's neck. Okay, so what I'm looking for here is that when I move this rein out to the side, that it actually picks up this rein at the same time. So shorten that up so that when I pull, these things both happen at the same time. Now at any time we can start to ask this horse to make a decision, and these will all be left-hand decisions primarily in this demonstration. Then I'll change to the other side. The next step will be to take this rein attachment, attach it to the bottom of the rope halter. On these particular halters that we're using, have a ring tied into them on the sides that actually creates a bridle, so you can carry a bit in there. And this would also be used as a side pull if you're not using the bit. So I'm going to start off with this just to give you a general description of what it looks like to kind of start to assist the horse. Now, when there is neck pressure, or neck contact I should say, putting that neck rein against the horse, what we don't want to do is add excessive pressure to accomplish a decision. In the teaching, all the teaching that we do, we go on the concept that you use contact to teach, pressure to correct, or pressure to block a decision if a horse is making a wrong decision, but not pressure to teach. Contact obviously is pressure because there's contact, but we want to keep it at the contact level so that the horse can work with the contact. So much of the time, if we are using either leg or rein on a horse and we apply excessive pressure to accomplish a decision, the horse most of the time doesn't know what the extra pressure means, that it relates to what we're asking the horse to do. So we'll find themselves concentrating on the pressure but not associating it to the decision. So this is what we want to start to eliminate and get the riders to think about this circle of communication here when this rein is around the horse's neck. And when I'm riding through the process, I'll keep that loop kind of open, and then when that rein touches his neck, that's the contact for the decision to go right. Rein touches his neck, contact, decision to go left. So that's where we want to kind of work from on this, and we'll see how it goes. And hopefully as I go through this, we have a little bit of a wind condition today, so hopefully this won't interfere with things too much. I think we're okay. I'll go ahead and get started on this. Now we're using a mounting block, even though this is a very small horse. I find that the mounting block is a more humane way to mount. We don't end up pulling on his back. So as I pick up the rein, I'm going to pick up the left rein as I get ready to mount. Okay, now from this point on, I'll have to make some adjustments probably, but I'm going to just contact with the right rein, and I can help him make that decision by having his head just slightly tipped to the direction we're going, which is left. And then every time I touch his neck, when that left shoulder steps in freely, that outside rein just disappears. This inside rein is primarily just to create a flexion or a shape for the horse. Add that neck rein, horse steps in. But you're not pulling on the bit. The bit is just there to keep the horse in a stationary position to the left. And when you apply that neck rein, release it. Now what happens in this movement here is this left shoulder steps in. every time that steps in, I'm going to release that rein on the outside so that I can almost create a rhythm of the step and come down to the point that the horse will actually step into the hind quarter pivot. So this is where we want to go with this, and we'll just start asking for these neck reins. One of the purposes that we have in the bridleless riding is that the horse starts to pick up the communication of decisions aside from what we normally use in terms of our bit. So here we have a situation where we have the loop is open, the loop closes around the horse steps in away from it, and so we want to continue to do this. Now, kind of a handy thing that helps the horse a little bit, if I put this neck rein on his neck and then I reach here and touch my fingertips, it seems to generate more of a decision. There's no pressure involved, it's purely contact. Touch his neck, put my fingers, and we want to get to the point eventually on the horse that there's nothing on the horse at all except the fingertips of the rider. So that's just a way of starting to introduce that portion of it. All left-hand decisions. And we don't ever want to find ourselves dragging the horse into the decision with excessive pressure on this loop rein or this neck rein. This is purely designed to cause a decision for the horse, and if our release of that contact is in coordination with the horse's decision, there starts to make sense to them that we're trying to do something with them rather than something to them. Okay, we'll filter this down a little bit. I'm going to bring him to a stop by just picking up on this rein against his chest a little bit. That's his stop, not using the bit. Ask for the backup from the same position, softly. Oh boy. Now we change the bit to the other side. And just as a practical use of the horse in a lesson program, the reason for not stopping here to do the dismount and having it out there is just associates the other decision of the the other decision of the horse to pick up and want to follow the person. Attaboy. Attaboy. Now reverse the whole thing going to this direction. In this case, the bitted rein is just to have the horse in this general flexed position, but we're not using the bit. We're using the neck rein to ask for that shoulder to step in. Now, because we started on the other side, I'll come back to that side. I'll come back to this side. Pick him up, a little assistance. This is why if you have your loop design, the size of your loop design, so that when you get to the end of the loop, that you'll end up with the contact of the bit. That way you're not fishing around trying to find extra rein to do something if you have to make a correction. Sometimes when we're doing these lessons with people, the question comes up, well, how much leg do you use? Well, leg is typically, in these, it's part of a reference or becomes somewhat of a support for a decision. I don't like to get into the habit of using leg for every decision that I do. Then the horse starts to depend on those decisions, on that leg rather. Wait for him to come off that. Attaboy. Okay, now we're going to go from the bit contact to the halter contact and proceed from there on the same lesson. Same thing applies here. When I pick up this this loop rein around his neck, I want to be able to have that rein that's reaching the halter come in contact at the same time. Now when we're starting to teach a neck rein lesson and or a bridle lesson, we won't want to add in so many decision-making requests that the horse just gets befuddled with everything, but offer suggestions for decisions, allowing the horse to have free roam pretty much, and then you bring in a rein contact for a decision, you reward it from that, and you carry on like that. So you're not just turning, trying to make all of these decisions for the horse. So the horse can kind of realize that when the request comes up, so they don't get over anxious. Some horses will get really anxious if we just turn. So remember that we're trying to educate the horse. We're not trying to demand something. We're trying to educate him. So we'll take him off a little bit and speed up the lesson just a little. Now on these stops, what I'm doing on the stop, because this is part of bridles, that when I change my seat, I'm actually going to push both feet forward as if I was pressing on a pair of brakes. And what that does when you do that is that your inside of your knees actually create pressure on the horse. Ripley, quit. So that inside pressure, if I put this pressure on my knees like this by pushing, I can start to teach the horse from that pressure to back up. A lot of times you'll see people in a bridleless thing, they'll fan the horse with their legs to back them up. And it's really not necessary if you start teaching just locking those knees in there and releasing the knees, so that you don't end up with all this motion that it doesn't really represent the refinement of the horse, I think, when this kind of stuff is done. Not that it's bad, but just another way to look at it. So now we'll take this and change it to the other side and repeat the lesson. Here when we're making just decisions for the horse, these are little subtle decisions just to move the horse over a step. And as long as he feels the circle or the looseness of the circle when things are right, he'll start to realize that every time he gets touched by that outside rein to make a decision for that direction. But these are just contact decisions. We're really just touching his hair. We're not trying to push on his skin or pull his neck or anything like that. Now, when you're making decisions on your bridleless riding, a lot of times people will talk about the horse will go where you look. Well, I can guarantee you that I can do this and that with my head and the horse won't go where I'm looking. But if I imagine that my eyes are on my shoulder and I make these decisions for my directional changes by moving my shoulders, every time I move my shoulders, it affects my lower torso. And it's not something that has to be exaggerated or thought about, it just happens. So as we're riding, if I'm going to turn this horse to my right, I want my shoulders to turn to the right as well,